Hey everyone, Harry here to give you a sort of end of week overall assessment of what's been a certainly very active time of real pushback in the federal courts by organizations and people who are really being harmed by some of Trump's sweeping executive orders. But we anticipated that this would happen. It's sort of the American way. But for a couple weeks anyway, Trump was pretty much carpet bombing the Constitution and the executive branch, and without much pushback, no more. So we now have more than 3 dozen lawsuits that have been filed challenging major Trump administration actions pretty much across the board. Some of the DEI stuff, some of the immigration stuff, some of the birthright citizen stuff, a lot of the federal employee protection stuff. They have, that is the administration, completely run roughshod over a whole elaborate series of protections for civil service employees. And in fact, it's kind of dastardly because there will be pushback now. They should even win against them and get money damages, but it might take a year or two, and the prospects for just getting back what they lost, their job, and their regular life, I think are going to be, compromised, even if their legal rights are vindicated. But what's basically happening in these many lawsuits is lawyers are going in and saying, Judge, this is against the law. We'll prove it, but first, stop. Freeze the linebackers here because, and there's a special standard that federal courts employ in order to do that. You have to make a pretty high showing that you're probably going to win on the merits, that the balance of equities favors you, basically that if it goes forward, you really get screwed much more than the government does, those being the main things. So they've come in and made showings, and a lot of courts have accepted it, which is the first step in an overall encouraging possibility that the courts will push back. Now, the general landscape always starts at the federal district court level. Then you have to think about the Court of Appeals and then the U.S. Supreme Court. Many of these are really fundamental issues that will wind up at the U.S. Supreme Court. And we also this week had our first case go from the district court level to the Court of Appeals level. And that's the case by a district court judge in Seattle, actually a Reagan appointee, against the birthright citizenship order and the effort essentially to upend decades of law and make birthright citizenship not apply to the children of people who are here illegally, even though the flat out terms and express language of the 14th Amendment seems to foreclose it. It says, if you're born here, you are a citizen. They've got a crafty argument for why it doesn't count for illegal immigrants. I don't think it will prevail. But anyway, we're now up to that second level of an issue that will probably reach the third level, that being the Supreme Court. A lot of these cases we saw over the last several years that Trump made a big point of forum shopping, and in particular, still doing it, some very selective foreign shopping. The two judges that he just loves whenever he can get them, Eileen Cannon down in Florida, and Judge Matthew Kacsmaryk, whom in a really bad design flaw is about the only judge in Texas. It's so big, there are divisions, and they are huge, and there can be, in effect, if you go to the Amarillo division of the federal court of the Northern District of Texas, you get for Trump good old Matthew Kacsmaryk, the guy who enjoined mifepristone and other things. So The Dems now are not, or not the Dems really. It's this really primarily not about Democrats versus Republicans. It's about victims of Trump's actions versus Trump, or patriots, people standing up for democracy versus Trump. But anyway, they are going to. It's not the same kind of savage forum shopping, but going to courts that overall that are likely to be more sympathetic, even though there are many judges on them. DC District Court for starters, but also Seattle and Boston and Maryland. That's where these actions are being brought. Okay, so I've told you about birthright citizenship, and the courts absolutely slapped around the poor DOJ attorney who had to go in court and try to defend this. They, accused Trump of ignoring the rule of law, etc. So they were, really came out of the box strong. In addition, a federal judge blocked in the same way. The plaintiffs go in, say, freeze this, and then if you freeze it, we'll go to trial and show you why it's unlawful. But while we're in trial, it's not going to be in effect. So the immediate skirmish is about that, getting it stayed so it won't be in effect. And a federal judge in Rhode Island did that for the widespread federal funding pause, which is just, a total violation of the impoundment principle. You have the administration just saying, well, grants, aids, billions of dollars appropriated by Congress. We don't feel like it. We want to pause and make sure the American people get their money's worth, or whatever crap they espouse. But you can't do that. It's a law. Congress has passed it. Here's the money, and you can't just simply forget about it. I think they're cruising for a bruising there, and it's been enjoined. In another tape out that I'll just quickly summarize now, I told you about the negotiated short-term resolution where the DOJ, that seems to be wanting to go after people who worked the January 6 cases, has ordered up the production of thousands of FBI agents, and the FBI has complied, but a court acting on behalf of or acting in a lawsuit brought by FBI Agents Association and FBI personnel has entered an order based on the parties' negotiations that say, all right, we won't do anything to disclose the names of these people. And that's kind of a important principle. It could be damage once the barn door is open that can't be remedied. So that's the perfect reason that you would have a stay. And so that's the kind of lay of the land. All kinds of lawsuits, more often, much more often than not so far, a freezing of the guard, a freezing of the status quo, while they then move to trying whether the action of the administration is lawful. And that's at the district court level. And, one hopes that that's an institution that will hold. I mean, we know, for instance, the Senate and the House has been basically completely in Trump's thrall and does whatever he wants. They're not an effective check. But we really have to see about the courts. They're really the most important. But right now, the district court level is one thing. We'll then go to the Court of Appeals and the ultimate, of course, the Supreme Court, and how will things work out. But for the moment, we have, after a pretty quiet couple weeks, and well, not quiet at all, in fact, bombs going off everywhere, quiet on behalf of the people who would oppose Trump's assaults on democracy. We have a week in which there's real action in the courts. It's largely gone against Trump. And there's also some action in the Congress now. A minority can only do so much, not much they can do, but they're sort of guerrilla actions that can happen. So when the Trump administration shuttered the USAID office, members of Congress, including Jamie Raskin, showed up. And there's a similar kind of filibuster they did, temporary, but just to change the, bring public focus on it, having to do with one of Trump's nominees. So, action and pushback on behalf of democracy is stirring in the land. There's been a really damaging several first few weeks, but there are concrete, real reasons for hope and optimism that a pushback will prevent the worst anyway from happening. What's happened already is pretty bad, but the worst from happening, and we have hopefully the start of that in this week. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.